Hey, welcome to Guitar Knobs, the guitars, gear, noise, and nonsense podcast, hosted today by these knobs.
Hey, how you doing? It's Todd from the Guitar Knobs. I got Jeff Schroeder sitting here. We're backstage in Cleveland for the show tonight with Jane's Addiction.
Good to see you.
Yeah, man, you too. I'm going to try to keep my blood pressure down. I'm a little overexcited here, but we're going to try to catch a little bit of time with Jeff before they go on tonight. It's exciting because you got a new album out. Well, it's fourth one in like 3 years.
It's coming out, I think, April 2023, but
you're releasing
the first single is officially out. Beguiled is out and on the radio, and there's a crazy video for it and stuff.
Yeah.
And then Billy on his podcast has been really playing a new song every week. And the only place that you can hear those is on the podcast. So in theory, you can probably hear 4 or 5, 6 songs at this point, but you have to listen to his podcast called 33. 33.
Podcast is called 33 if you want to hear the rest of that.
And it's, everywhere you listen to your podcast. And so I think he does something like he has a guest, he plays a new song and talks about it because it is technically a concept album. So I think he gives a bit of the story and everything that it's kind of based around, and then some context for the song.
It kind of feels like all of them are concept albums. So, I mean,
but this one is actually, there's a story,
okay.
And then I think he talks about an old song too.
Okay.
And then, so you can listen to a bunch of the new stuff on that podcast.
Awesome. Now you're doing a couple songs tonight. Is there anything, are those just the first ones out, or are they specifically?
I think, the reason we're playing those songs is one obvious. We're playing Beguiled. It's the single, so that's
which is an absolute banger.
Empires is another. It's actually another song we're playing. I think maybe the other stuff was picked because it fits well with the general set that we're doing. They integrate quite well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite to play? Can you say that?
I really like playing Empires and Beguiled, and I like playing Beguiled too. They're both really fun songs to play.
Yeah.
Just as a guitar player, they're just fun riffs to play.
Heads down.
Empires has a little more movement to the riff, and then Beguiled is cool because it's just like old school Judas Priest or something, just chugging on the
it's nice to swing back around to that, which Pumpkins does such a great job of this. Is like you'll do a handful of songs, and now we're in like wispy dreamland, in the future, and then you come right back around and you get songs like Tarantula and stuff like that. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, and I think something like Empires is not too dissimilar to something that would have been on Zeitgeist or something like that. Yeah.
You are also playing a couple new guitars.
Yeah. I started actually even on the last tour that we did in May, but on this tour I'm playing a lot of mostly actually using the new like series, the new version of the Revstar, which is has some updated features. The body's actually a bit bigger, a little bit. So if you hold them side by side, you notice that actually the body's bigger. I feel like the neck is actually set in a little bit more. So
a deeper cut so you can get lower.
No, it's not. It's not the deeper cut, but the neck is set in farther, so the balance is actually better. The old original ones tend to be neck heavy.
Yeah.
And so the new ones, they've kind of made the balance a little more ergonomic, and so playing the guitar feels a lot better. What else? All the guitars that I'm playing, whether they're the professional or the standard, I believe, one series is made in Japan, the other's built in Indonesia, they're identical, except the Japanese one has these kind of some type of metal rods by the bridge set into the body.
Really?
Which is supposed to be like a tonal thing. But other than that, all the hardware, the pickups, the types of woods, the stainless steel frets, the tuners, everything is identical. And honestly, the craftsmanship and the construction, it's like I wouldn't be able to tell one from the other. So unless you can
How's
hear
the
those,
weight?
same too. So unless you can tell the titanium rods, if you can hear those,
We'll be listening for them.
yeah, the titanium. But the weight of the guitar, I would say they're still, because they're a little bit thinner, so they're lighter than a Les Paul.
Yeah.
And a little bit thicker than an SG. So kind of in between. So it kind of, and a lot of the new guitars have a standard like Tinematic style bridge. So definitely has more of that kind of less polished type of thing. But the guitars definitely have their own unique sound. And they feel different than playing like a Gibson. They definitely have their own feel. And the new ones also have these really cool, even though they have like say 2 humbuckers, it has a 5-position switch. So the kind of the 4 and the 2 position are these really cool. I don't know if they're out of phase, but they're kind of split pickup kind of sound. So you can actually get these really beautiful chimey cleans that you wouldn't normally think you would get out of a dual humbucker kind of guitar. But kind of the main one I'm playing is one that originally had P90s, and it sounded really great with the P90s, but being on these stages and kind of different power from day to day and having the video screen, I'm always a little weary of using single coil pickups because one day they're great and the next day it's like crazy 60 cycle hum, and sometimes it makes the guitar unusable. So I took those out and I put in these mini humbuckers, and they're made by my friend Chris, who owns Black Cat Guitars in Boston. Right. And they are the most incredible mini humbuckers I've ever heard. And I'm actually a big fan of mini humbuckers. I have a 72 Les Paul Deluxe that I really love, and that has mini humbuckers. And done right, they're a great pickup. Done wrong,
they look cool too.
Yeah, they do. I love them when they're set into the P90 casing. Yeah. It is a really bitchin' look, and
it's so weird the little things. It
looks. I know. It does. It looks really cool, and so I have that in my main E natural guitar, and I play that on Empires, Today, Sear, Starla. So I use it a lot on the kind of the front half of this set, and it's an incredible sounding guitar. And that's an Indonesian one too, but it plays and sounds phenomenal. I can't say enough about those guitars, and those pickups that Chris makes are really special. I mean, they sound really great distorted, but they sound.
Well, you're not the first person who's brought that up. Yeah. In the last couple of months, so I think we're going to have to try to get them on the show.
Yeah, you should definitely have them on the show, and then but they sound phenomenal clean. Like it's like the best clean sound too, and
you're kind of really going clean into your effects, or
I mean, different. On this tour, I actually I have a Analog Man Beano Boost, which is old school, like a Dallas Arbiter line driver.
Oh, thank you, sir. Much obliged. Hey, thanks for the extra push on these.
Intrusion from Doug Goodman.
Yeah, that guy's amazing. We were talking about all the cool tours he's been on and reminiscing about dates and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah, but as I was saying, on this tour I added the Beano Boost, which is like a line driver, which is like the Rangemaster clone, basically, but these are special ones that Mike made he made one for me, made one for Billy, that has these new old stock Matt Mullard germanium transistors that I think you can maybe order on the website, but it's not like the stock one comes with something different, and these are like the special ones, and he made one for me. Like I said, made one for me, one for Billy, and we're both using it, and that's anytime I'm playing a lead that's on. And I don't actually have that in my rack because it's germanium, so I have it basically right after my wah, and because it wants to see natural guitars, it doesn't want to see anything buffered. So if you're hitting anything digital or that's been buffered, it's not going to...
Not unlike a treble boost or a fuzz or something.
Yeah, so that's why you got to have it, because, I mean, essentially it is like a treble booster, line driver treble booster, but this one has 3 positions: low, mid, and high, and I kind of keep it just in the middle. It kind of works best that way. But other than that, I just turn that on for leads.
Is everything beyond that? Is it all Helix?
No. I mean, Helix, I'm still only in this band. I only use just for effects, and so on this, starting last year, our last tour, which I guess was last spring in May, I started using Rev amps. So I'm using the Generator 120s, the Mark III version. I think this is the 3rd iteration of it, and fantastic heads. I mean, it's so great. I actually have like kind of a fairly crazy setup now. I mean, but it seems simple to me. But so I, have whatever the few pedals on the ground, then I go into Helix, which is kind of does all the effects and signal routing. Yeah. And I have and I have the preamp of the head in a loop of Helix. Oh. And so I can put the amp anywhere in the signal chain that I want. So I can have some effects before going into the amp, and then I can have some things like post the preamp, like if I want like a big delay or a reverb or something like that, I can have that afterwards. And then after it goes back out of Helix back into the power section of the head, and which is kind of a fairly traditional way to, basically using the amp's effects loop. Yeah. And then it goes both to a cabinet, and I'm going actually now to a 2-notes Captor X.
That's what I'm...
Yeah. So I'm using that in the Captor X, which is kind of a proprietary impulse response. Yeah. You can't load any impulse response. You have to use theirs because they have a certain way of crunching the numbers and stuff. Yeah. But they sound phenomenal, really great. And so I go into one of those, and I'm using a Friedman 4x12 cabinet with vintage 30s. In my real cabinet is a Marshall with vintage 30s.
When you say your real, so
I'm running.
I'm
both.
Tracking now in the Captor X. You've got the cab sim.
I'm running a real cabinet
and a real cab.
A Marshall 4x12 1960 cab, the standard with vintage 30s, and then I'm also running the 2-notes Captor X with like a digital impulse response emulation of a Friedman 412 with the vintage 30s. And with a 57 and 421. But honestly, everything that you hear out front and it like what I hear in my ears and what the whole band hears is only the Captor X. With the live cabinet is just for a backup. Okay. But we even have a backup of the Captor X. So yeah. And then I'm also using I can't remember the company, but Trace, my guitar tech, found this thing for me, and it's called the Juice Extractor. It's a tube DI. And so out of the Captor X, because I go back into a full analog tube DI that then goes to monitors in front of house. So my last bit of my signal is there's only analog signal.
There's a test after this.
If
anybody can map this out, I'll give you something.
Even though I am running some digital stuff, any signal that actually goes to the front of house is analog by the end.
Man, it's crazy because having the Captor X in there with all of the stuff that you have, which is also a piece of gear that me and a bunch of our listeners are like, that's in our house.
Yeah.
That's kind of wild.
Yeah, they're phenomenal. Great.
What turned you on to that?
Well, the Rev Generator 120 heads have one built in, and so I started using that in conjunction. But out here on the road, you always want to alleviate like potential problems. So because I didn't want to have say for some God forbidden reason, the Captor X and the head went out, then I'd have to use a different head, and I'm really become fond of like one head in particular, even though they sound honestly pretty similar, but no two heads sound exactly the same. Sure. And so I really like using the one. I didn't want to be like, well, if that goes out, I don't want to have to switch heads. I'd rather just switch the Captor X. So we started using the external, just as it's kind of a safety net. And the external honestly has like a few more features that the one built in doesn't have. The external one has a few extra knobs on the front end that you can kind of fine tune the sound just a little bit, but they're essentially the same. I mean, I didn't really notice when I started using the external, I didn't really notice any sound difference.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. That's wild.
But honestly, the Captor X is great because
I think you probably just sold about another 100 of those.
it's phenomenal because you can really fine tune the cabinet sound.
Yeah.
And like where, we roll like a tiny bit of high end off the
without it being like absurdly complex to where you get lost in a sea of like, oh my gosh.
But you can, really sit there and after when we're doing production rehearsals, could really sit there and go, okay, today I'm going to bring the 57 down 1 dB and turn it 8% off axis.
Yeah.
But you could then go through and really go,
like, wow,
that's
different.
it. That's it.
Yeah.
And when I would go and listen to what my guitar sounds like through front of house, because I don't know, maybe listeners may or may not know this, but most of the time, a band at our level, we're recording everything on Pro Tools, every rehearsal, every sound check, every show. So I can actually go and hear what my guitar sounds like through the PA. And it's shocking, like this sound through what's coming out of the Captor, that with the head and the helix, it sounds like studio guitar, not like typical live guitar. It sounds so dialed in and pristine. It's really like next level stuff. So I've never been happier.
We were just outside talking about this, actually. You're doing a lot of the major textural elements.
Yeah. A lot of the time I am... Sorry. we're doing an interview right now.
Hello, James.
James just... Yeah. Interviews. Most of the time I am... sometimes I'm doubling Billy's rhythm parts, but like Billy's rig is actually extremely simple, even though if you looked at it, it looks complicated because he's actually using 4 different heads. So he's using a head switcher, using 4 heads into one cabinet.
Oh.
So that's instead of using channel switching heads, he's just literally using 4 heads.
Wow.
For like his clean, medium, and then like 2 dirty heads,
right.
But only one at a time. But he only has actually 4 pedals. Like he doesn't really have hardly any pedals. So all the bigger
remarkable.
Textural stuff, either me and and actually James have to do all that.
Yeah, certainly not discounting what James is.
Yeah, doing all those things because Billy's sound is actually very just kind of raw.
Yeah,
because he's kind of holding down the fort on a lot of those riffs, and then he just kind of needs like a super jacked up lead sound. Yeah,
well, you're doing that, and then you were. I remember you mentioning in a previous one where you were really excited about the challenge of can I make my guitar sound as good or better than a synth?
Yeah,
to a degree, not all the time, but
Yeah, and that's why now even using something like using Helix is actually, in the way that it's routed, I can actually even bypass the real amp, and I can only use stuff like I could use fuzz into straight into the board kind of sounds and stuff too, which is sounds a lot. If you use that with certain types of effects, can sound a lot like a synth. Yeah, because you get really that square wave type of sound. Where an amp kind of, even if you have a square wave like a fuzz that uses that type of sound, once it goes into an amp, it kind of reshapes it. Yeah, and you get a little bit. If you try running a fuzz DI into the board, it's like a crazy sound, almost uncontrollable. Yeah. Yeah. Now, then use that with the Sustainiac. You really in kind of synth land. It's really fun. Yeah.
Most of the people who are listening, if they have a set that they're playing at whatever level, they get really excited when a particular song or a particular section of a song comes in, and it feels like, sort of like the 12-year-old kid kind of thing. Yeah. Do you have a particular element where you hit that?
I mean, honestly, like playing I'm always I love playing that song "Eye of the Morning." It's like I love that song, but then we played Cherub Rock right afterwards, and that song after that intro, when all three of us kick in the big distortion, on the intro,
and the people melt every time.
It's awesome every night. Like it's just that's fun.
As a fan, that's really cool to hear because the last thing you want, it's like don't meet your heroes. And don't ask people to tell you about the thing that you really like because they'll probably hate it, or something like that. But so that's actually that's good to hear.
Yeah. And I mean, like for me, just to be able to be up there playing guitar, playing arenas, like it really doesn't get any better. I mean, I've been lucky enough to have been able to play. I know I've even played a few stadiums, not as much as the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but you know what I mean?
Well, you've done some things where you can't even see the audience.
Yeah. I played obviously a lot of festivals and stuff, but I love like when your standard gig a lot, becomes like, wow, you're playing the arena every night. It's just awesome. Like from everything of like, there's a certain energy. The arena show has an energy that no other type of show has, even if they're bigger or smaller.
Well, it's contained.
Yeah.
It's like Disney. It's like being at Disneyland versus being at like a fair or something. Everything's all figured out and you're there. You don't get a view to anything else.
And it's, we all have like those fantasies of like, oh my God, like I would love to seeing like U2 in a club. Or I want to see like the Who, or actually one time Billy and I went and saw Kiss at the Whiskey in L.A. And it's a tiny place.
Yeah.
And you think it's going to be incredible, and it is to us, but part of it's like you realize like, oh, I would much rather be seeing Kiss in an arena with all the explosions and the sound and like they're kind of built. Their show was really built for that, and.
Well, I think Pumpkins is very much like, it's a big...
Our gear, like when we did like
machine.
we did 2 club shows right before this tour, and I had some fans, but they said it was incredible. But for me, I feel like our rigs and stuff are not really built for that small of a space. They're built for the big show, and so so to me, this is like the perfect size.
It's not so big that you can't connect.
Yeah,
and it's not so small that you're like, maybe I'm not getting the full show or something like that.
Yeah, and it's just exciting.
Yeah.
It's just a certain excitement. I never get tired of walking out in that first, like you hit the first note, it's just like, bam, you're rocking, you're in. It's awesome. Just like a certain energy. It's cool.
Now you're obviously playing with Jane's Addiction. It's had a couple setbacks, but fortunately
they're here tonight. They're here tonight.
I'm so excited about that. And you have Troy up there, Troy Van Leeuwen. Do you get to watch? Have you talked about guitars and gear and stuff?
We haven't talked shop too much. I've got to watch some sound check.
So you're talking about a super band. The future is that?
and it's Dave Navarro's signature on the sound. Absolutely can be. I mean, he wrote the parts that Troy's playing, and actually hearing someone else play them and interpret them really made me realize like how unique of a player Dave is. But Troy definitely is a big enough player himself to where, and I think that's why they chose someone like him, is that he could come in and play it, which you could find a lot of people out there in the world that could play the riffs.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to play it and then own it and then kind of do your own thing with it for it to be believable. So it doesn't sound like a cover band.
Yeah.
So it sounds, and his vibe is a little more, his sound and his vibe is a little more raw in your face. And so it almost sounds, it really highlights to me, like what I hear when I hear them play with Troy, is it highlights the real Zeppelin-y kind of influence that's in that early Jane's music.
Yeah.
Because I think he plays a little more, less hot LA metal guitar player like Dave, which, me, I love that. I love that. He
certainly was instrumental in creating that entire, thing.
And Troy's a little more like heavy Jimmy Page with a little more sonics, because he has a cool
and a lot of weird dark stuff.
Yeah, he has a lot of cool pedals, and and so it's really bitchin'. I mean,
cool.
and you know, so beside but him, I think really too. Now that you have Eric Avery back,
Yes.
and
wrote most of the early stuff.
Exactly. So hearing the guy who wrote the riffs, play the riffs, and really, he's the driving force of the band in a certain way. And so it's, I mean, I'll tell you from every night, the crowd reaction, people are fucking blown away.
Yeah.
It's rocking. It's so good. It's like, it's amazing.
Well, and you know, we're roughly the same age, and both of us are from Southern California area, and there wasn't anything. I mean, they're so important to that scene and everything. Knowing that era and then sharing stages and stuff has got to be.
It's crazy because even with someone like Troy, and I've never even had a chance to tell him this, you know, but you know, because I started playing, I graduated high school in 1992, and so I started playing Hollywood clubs in that summer, or that fall, basically. By the time I graduated, I joined a band that was with guys that they were just a little bit older than me, so they were already playing, and so I got to play all those clubs, and so I started hanging out and becoming part of that, you know, that music scene there, and there's that band that I used to see all the time, that band from LA called Failure, which, you know, they've kind of gotten bigger more recently, but at the time they were signed, they were putting out records, but they were not really that known. And then they had the one album, Fantastic Planet, that started to do a little bit well. They had, you know, K-Rock, the local radio station, was playing the single Stuck on You. And so they were kind of doing bigger tours, and they added a second guitar player. They were normally a trio, and they added a second guitar player, and it was Troy. And he was just a local LA guitar player, I guess, at the time. And it took me a long time to like realize, like years later, I'm like, wait a second, that guy was, you know, I saw him.
Everything
I saw him at, you know, there was this cool club called the Opium Den in LA, and I remember seeing Failure there in a room, you know, not much bigger than this whole space, and so I think him and I kind of came from that same. You know, a lot, like listening to a lot of the same bands, I'm sure, and coming up, with a similar set of influences. So I know for him, playing with Janes is pretty cool. Because he gets it, he gets the vibe. Because he was.
Yeah, it's not just the songs. You have to understand what the soul of not only the band is, but what the history is and the connection to the people.
And honestly, to be up there with Perry, Eric, and Stephen Perkins and all the chaos up there, you got to have a strong enough personality to own your part of the stage, and he certainly does. So it's cool. All the respect from me.
You also have to do that.
I don't think about it. I mean, as my, Pumpkins is, every band has its own energy, and to go and fit into another band's energy isn't easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Solid. Well, Jeff, I know you got to get on stage here pretty soon, so we'll wrap things up. I really appreciate you.
Oh, of course. No, I'm glad we got to do this because I love doing it. Yeah, so
yeah.
I figured before the show it just afterwards would be too chaotic.
Oh, for sure. So, anyways, have a great show. Break a leg. What do you guys? Is it a break a leg thing or is it a great show?
A break a leg is good.
Break a leg.
Yeah.
All right, do that. Well, that was my interview with Jeff Schroeder, the Smashing Pumpkins. And I got to say, the show they put on was nothing short of fantastic. And Jane's Addiction just killed it. So thanks so much to Jeff for sharing his time before the show with all of us. As a music fan and a guitar gear enthusiast, it is always a treat to talk to him. I would also like to give an enormous thank you to Doug Goodman, the tour manager, and all the staff that was just incredibly kind and helpful to us. They took great care of us and made us feel special, and we really did appreciate it. Please, if you have the chance, get out and see this show. It is truly an amazing show. Thank you all for listening. Have a fantastic guitar week, and subscribe!
Well, that's it for these knobs. Please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/ facebook.com/theguitarknobs. Visit our website at theguitarknobs.com for all of our past episodes, 4 on the Floor blog, and other good stuff. You can connect with us on social too at our Facebook page and share your gear and stories on our Facebook group. Also, be sure to check out our Instagram at Guitar Knobs. Catch you next time.